Hey, this is Andrew, and the Lenovo Legion Go is kind of weird. I've done multiple videos on the PC handheld market, and I've got a lot more to say on it in general, but I've been playing on the Steam Deck, I've been playing on the ROG Ally X a ton, and I really wanted to check this guy out. And like I said, this thing is pretty weird. The Lenovo Legion Go is the biggest of all the handhelds that I've used, and honestly, I want to be upfront and say that I love that. It's 16 by 10, just like the Steam Deck, and I'm starting to think that that's a big reason I didn't like the display on the ROG Ally X. Honestly, the 16 by 10 aspect ratio on these handhelds feels amazing, and the bigger display on the Lenovo Legion Go being 8.8 inches is a massive canvas that makes games plenty immersive. The colors aren't as impressive as the OLED display on the Steam Deck OLED, but the big display makes up for that, and the panel itself is actually very colorful. The resolution is also pretty high at 2560 by 1600, and this means that all of the UI elements, the OS elements, everything looks really sharp and crisp. At the same time though, and this is where the downsides and the weird parts of the system start to come up, the Legion Go is not powerful enough to run pretty much any games that I can find outside of small indies and emulation at that resolution. This display is also 144 Hz display, which is great, but it's another odd element and odd choice from the Lenovo team. It's up from the 90 and 120 Hz that we see from its main competitors, but again, when are you hitting 144 Hz on the Lenovo Legion Go? It's just a really odd choice to put this level of display tech into a handheld that isn't going to be pushing those numbers. And it makes me really wonder how much some of these choices affected the price of the system, which I will go over a little bit closer to the end. The hardware around the display is also really odd. Lenovo opted to go the route of Nintendo with this thing and implement these detachable controller Joy-Con dealios. The back of the Legion Go itself has a kickstand so you can put it down on a table, and I will say I wish Nintendo takes a note from this because the stand is very stable and it goes very far back, so you can have this at really any angle. And that was a nice touch if you're doing the detachable controller thing. They didn't go all the way Nintendo though. These controllers are singular controllers. If you want to play games with somebody nearby, you both need your own controllers. So you got to bring a Bluetooth controller or another wired controller, because even when detached, you have to hold both controllers in order to play pretty much any of the games you are going to play. So the question is, why are they detachable? Because there's no rail or anything like on the Switch where you can connect them to make a small handheld controller. You hold them separately. So if there's no point in giving them to other people, why even detach them in the first place? Well, this leads us into one of the weirdest things that Lenovo decided to do with this system, and that is the FPS mode. Now, I am primarily an FPS gamer. I like shooters, they're a blast. I like shooting straight and having fun. It's a good time. But the Lenovo Legion Go marketed this FPS mode, which made me very curious. The system comes with a plastic puck that magnetically connects to one of the controllers. And also, just to be clear, the system does come with a big carry case, and there is a slot in that case for the magnetic puck. So they do expect you to be bringing this around. And I also want to point out that is another handheld PC console gaming machine that comes with a really nice travel case in the box that is cheaper than the ROG Ally X. Still kind of butthurt that the Ally X came with no accessories. But like I said, this puck is supposed to connect to the right-hand controller, and on the bottom of that controller, there's a little switch that has normal mode and FPS mode. And when you switch it to FPS mode, and all of a sudden, this little joystick handheld dealio turns into a mouse. And this took me a little bit, but I think I know how I'm supposed to hold it now. I try not to watch anything else from any other creators when I'm creating my own videos because I don't want to take other people's opinions or biases and throw them into my own script. So I really just had to figure out, how do I hold this? Because it made very little sense. I think I know how to hold it now, but it just does not feel right in the hand. This is an incredibly uncomfortable thing to hold and play with. And I'm sorry, I just have to be upfront. This thing's terrible. Spoilers, it's bad. It's kind of mind-blowing to me that it's called FPS mode because Lenovo Legion Go expects you to use this little thing to play FPS games, which are generally a little bit more competitive. They expect you to use that to outgun people that are competing against you. And I cannot wrap my head around it because there's already a perfectly decent controller built into the system that is way more reliable and way simpler and more reliable to use than this weird FPS mode mouse emulator joystick flight stick thing. In games like Counter-Strike, where you're required to use a mouse, you're not using a controller at all in CS, it's frankly abhorrent. I have no idea how they made this and expected people to be able to use it viably in an FPS. And again, I'm not saying you only use this in FPS, but it is called FPS mode, so it is meant for games like Counter-Strike and Valorant and Overwatch, where you're primarily going to be using a mouse. But even in games like Valorant now and Overwatch that have controller support, I just have no idea why you would ever use the FPS mode over just using the controller. It's a cool idea, but stop, don't do that. Nope, nobody wanted that. Please stop it. It is not good to use. And this this does lead us to the controllers themselves. They're thick, well built, they're a little bit creaky, but they're a pretty standard controller. On the right hand controller, when it's not in FPS mode, they included a small trackpad. It's not as good as the Steam Deck's trackpad, but it makes navigating the OS, navigating Windows much nicer. Both sides of the controllers have decent triggers. They have good bumpers, even though the bumpers and triggers seem a little high for my normal hand placement. But the back buttons that they have that are mappable on the system are not symmetrical, and they're placed differently because of the FPS mode, and this is really weird to hold. They're also glossy buttons, so you feel the texture on your hands differently, and they're in different spots, and it's awkward, and there's shoulder buttons, and it's simply because of this really weird FPS mode. And also, to harp on the FPS mode again, I'm sorry, it seems simple enough to say that you have a mouse in your right hand and a controller in your left hand, but it's not that simple. Pretty much every game that has controller support and mouse and keyboard support expects you to choose one input, and then it locks you to that input. And on the right controller, when you're using this mouse mode, the controller is upside and all the back buttons are wrapping your hand around, so you can use a mouse button 1, a mouse button 2, and a scroll wheel, which is also, by the way, built into the right controller. And then your left hand is using a traditional stick and D-pad layout. So your right hand is doing PC inputs, while your left hand is expected to be doing controller inputs, which most of the games I played, and frankly, all of the games I played, didn't really understand. This means, for instance, if I hop into Gunfire Reborn and I'm playing in FPS mode, I can kind of run around because it recognizes that, and I can use the mouse to shoot, even though it would be easier on a controller. But the second I walk up to a portal and it's like, okay, you're playing on keyboard and mouse, press F to go through the portal. I can't press F because F isn't a D-pad button. And this means you have to do a ton of mapping. This means you're mapping stuff like E and F to different D-pad inputs, or you're trying to reach around with your hand and hit some of the face buttons on the right controller, and you've got to do it for each game you play, and I'll just be completely honest, it is not worth it. Don't do this. The FPS mode does not make sense. It is a cool idea, but it is not good in execution. And again, like I said with the display, it makes me think, what if they toned this down a little bit? What would the price tag be? If they made the controllers built into the handheld itself and then removed the FPS mode with the extra buttons and the mouse sensor, does that shave $50 to $100 more off of this price tag? I don't know. And there's one other thing I do want to harp on really quick. It is a small thing, but when I was testing it, I put it in my notes, so I wanted to throw it in the script. When playing on the system and having vibration on, the vibration motors are weirdly high pitched, much higher pitched than any controllers I've ever used. And the sounds are unique enough that whenever it goes off when you're playing a game, you just hear that tone very specifically. And the speakers aren't compelling enough to really drown that out. So if you're playing handheld, whenever those vibrators are going off, you're just hearing this kind of shrill, higher pitched vibration noise. And it is a little bit obnoxious. Games though, this is a little gaming device. How does it do with gaming? Gaming is a big hit or a miss. And I think because of how premium it feels and how big it is, I assume that games are gonna run a little bit better. I know that the display is higher resolution than 1080p, but I was kind of hoping to be able to play games reliably in 1080p, and that can be kind of a struggle depending on the title. I finally wanted to get Far Cry 6 and give that a crack, so I thought this would be a great place to start it. And the game is playable, but it definitely struggles. I'm playing on low settings at 1080p, and I'm pulling average of like 20 to 25 frames most of the time, and that can get really frustrating. Playing games is not as clear and as smooth as it was on the ROG Ally X, and so because of that, I would honestly recommend avoiding any shooters, which is weird considering there's an FPS mode built into this thing. But that makes it run into this issue. It's not as comfortable to play on as the ROG Ally X, and it's not as fun to play on as the Steam Deck, so I don't really have any desire to play on my Lenovo Legion Go. I have played on it enough to be able to take notes and work on this video, but frankly, it just kind of sat on a table downstairs for a good while because I had no desire to play on it, because I'd rather play on the Ally X or the Steam Deck. Games besides things like Far Cry, games that aren't as demanding, run perfectly fine, and there are plenty of super low power indie games that you can pull 144 frames and get that max resolution. And they play and they look super solid on that big gorgeous display, the big controllers, decent ergonomics. It can be really fun to play on this thing if you're playing the right games. But the second you start putting any pressure on the Legion Go, it generally wants to underserve. And that's a weird one for me because I can play games on 25 to 30 frames on the Steam Deck, have a great time with the OLED display, and with the lower resolution display, everything works, feels, and looks a little bit better because they've drawn it back a little bit. The Legion Go just pushed it with the high resolution display, high refresh display, and expected the games to just work. And I think the resolution and display are the biggest problem here, honestly. And when you know your display is a higher resolution display and you're already using a bigger display, you want to play the games at the resolution that your display is. It's kind of natural. I have a 32-inch 4K display. I want to play games in 4K. I'd rather not cannot run 1080p on a display that is already made for higher resolution. I feel like the resolution and the refresh rate of the Lenovo Legion Go are just kind of pushing back on the system a little bit and making it a lesser experience than it should be. Unboxing this thing at first was great. I thought the unboxing experience was awesome, and it really set me up with this idea that I had an awesome piece of hardware in my hands. And I still think that I do. I really like the Legion Go. I really like what it's trying to be. I like that you have two USB-C ports, again, one on the top, one on the bottom. I like the kickstand, even though I never use it. And I like that they're trying to do creative things with stuff like FPS mode. It also made navigating Windows way easier. With a bigger display and the touchpad, it was really nice. Just like the Ally X with Armory Crate, there is a Lenovo Legion Go software that is built in and set to one of the buttons that is on the right stick controller already. And I was really happy to see that when I opened that and I hit game platforms, I was able to hit one of the game platforms, being Steam, and it instantly started downloading instead of just sending me to a landing page in Microsoft Edge like the Ally did. Little things like that make an experience so much better. What absolutely baffled me though was that once it finished downloading, I went to open Steam and it did not download Steam. It downloaded a JPEG of Steam's logo. Huh? Why did it download a PNG of Steam? What? So now for some reason, and I haven't figured out how to remap it, but whenever I open Steam through the Lenovo Legion Go software, it just opens a JPEG of the Steam logo. I have to manually use the mouse and go open Steam itself, which is fine. Again, with a bigger display and a touchpad, much nicer than the ROG Ally X, but they seem to be doing a lot of really interesting things that just end up really awkward and weird. It's a variety of odd choices like these that have me thinking that this system is just weird. And I think it's incredibly odd, but I don't hate it. Something that does have to be said and the flowers have to be given is that the Lenovo team here was really creative. I think there is a ton of room right now in the market for innovation for PC handhelds, and I can really tell that Lenovo sat down, tried to figure out how they could push this market in new directions. Unfortunately though, happens sometimes, none of it really landed, especially for me. I wouldn't recommend this thing, but if you find it on a deal and you want to play around with it because it's fun, it's goofy, go for it. But don't get this thing expecting that you'll enjoy it that much and want to make it your main gaming machine. The system is $699 at Best Buy, and I cannot help but think that it should be cheaper. If they were to remove the detachable controllers, get rid of the weird FPS mode, and maybe drop the display to 1080p, 120 Hz or 144 Hz, then maybe this thing costs $500 or $550 instead. At that price, I feel like this would be a much more compelling gadget in the market. But at a price that's higher than a Steam Deck and so close to an ROG Ally X, I just cannot rationalize why anybody should buy this over any other handheld on the market. That being said, I am very excited to see what Lenovo has coming out next. I love the creativity, and frankly, I really want this hardware team to just knock it out of the park. I'm sure these guys have more weird ideas that they want to implement into the next Lenovo Legion Go, and I cannot wait to see what they try and execute on and what they take away. The sky's the limit. Innovation is needed, and I love that these guys are trying. That is it from me though. I am live right now if you're watching this video right when it went up, and I'm live randomly throughout the week. So if you ever want to hop in chat, have a conversation with me about the stuff I've been talking about or this video, feel free to follow me. The link is in the description. Also, if you want to drop a comment, responded to most of those. If you have nothing to say and don't mind, drop your favorite emoji. It does help out with the engagement of the video. We've got merch under the video, and I do want to say a big thank you to D Sanchez for being a channel supporter, being a member on the channel. If you want to support the channel, feel free to become a member. You get some perks. It means the world to me, and it's incredibly helpful. I love all you guys. And hey, thank you so much for watching this video.